We always follow Mario in a Super Mario game, Master Chief in a Halo game, Lara Croft in a Tomb Raider game. Standard. Castlevania, however, produces somewhat different results. Which of the many Belmonts within its storied lineage deserves the honor of being titled Most Notable Character? Or is it even a Belmont at all? Let's crack this castle open. Who is Castlevania's main character? Part 1. The Belmont Argument. Even if you're only modestly familiar with the franchise, there should be at least one name, besides Dracula, that should ring a bell. Simon Belmont. Arguably the most famous Belmont within the lineage, Simon earned his infamous rank by being first. Simply put, because Simon was the first Belmont everyone played as, he automatically became ingrained in everyone's mind as the ultimate archetypal whip-cracking badass. Every Belmont is equipped with the bare basics of whipping, jumping, and utilizing sacred relics, all thanks to Simon. Due to all of this notoriety, Simon makes a strong argument as being the most notable Belmont, the hero who did it first, using the least. And if you're still not convinced Simon's the epitome of badass, then allow me to sample you his theme song. Need I say more? But sheer OG awesomeness alone can't be the deciding factor. Nay, other Belmonts have performed notable deeds in the timeline too. Noble Leon from Lament of Innocence was the first to intertwine his family's fate with that of Dracula. Leon's descendant, Trevor, was the first mortal to actually kill Dracula. Then, in the future, we will encounter Julius and Aria of Sorrow, who, along with an A-class team of vampire hunters, will successfully sever Vlad's regeneration cycle, officially rendering Dracula dead and loving it. And if we were to even factor in Gabriel Belmont from the Lords of Shadow saga, his story sees an epic plot arc of salvation, damnation, and redemption. Every Belmont has had their moment of glory in the face of evil. In comparison to the other heroes, Simon's adventures had very little impact in the grand scheme of things. However, his original quest became the skeletal archetype of the entries to follow. In the first Castlevania, Dracula rose from the dead in his monster-filled castle, Simon whipped his face a bunch, then the castle came down, and everybody lived happily forever after. Kinda. Like most retro video games, a bulk of the compelling narrative is in your head, derived from the experience of fighting your way through a gothic castle filled with demons, monsters, and these little fuckers. But for as many times as Simon's adventures were retold, the story itself remained the same. So really, which of this bloody lot of Belmonts deserves to be regarded as the most important Belmont, and thus the most central character within Castlevania? It's a tough call. Each Belmont can make a decently compelling case as to why they are the most important. Except for Vincent. Vincent has no case. Anyway, since we're in a bit of a Belmont deadlock at the moment, perhaps now would be a good time to move on to our next candidate. Part 2. The Dracula Argument. The very demon they're fighting against in the first place. The antithesis to the Belmont argument has got to be the Dracula argument. I mean, I'm sure if it weren't for some sort of blood oath to slay an immortal sorcerer, the Belmont family would have quit that gig a long time ago. Trevor? He would have become a prolific painter or something like that, but not a vampire hunter. That shit fucks you up. You're just asking for trouble if you get into that line of work. But seriously, how many times has a Castlevania game featured a non-Dracula final boss? Well, there's Lament of Innocence, which features a pre-Dracula Dracula, and then there's the Sorrow duology, Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow, which features a post-Dracula Dracula. But between those two ends of the timeline, nearly every other game features Dracula not only as a major character within each individual story arc, but he also serves as the obligatory final battle. Again, he is the answer to the question that is the Belmonts. Dracula gives Castlevania a reason. At this point, the Dark Lord is making an even stronger claim to most series central character than the entire Belmont collective is. The impetus of the Castlevania series is Vlad Dracula's rise to power. Dracula as a single character is much more consistent plot-wise than a family collective of many individuals. And maybe it's the nemesis, not the hero, who plays the most central role in this franchise. Part 3. The Alucard Argument. It'd be a crime not to include Alucard, Dracula's estranged son, ranging from aiding the heroes to victory, acting as a major plot device, to even playing the role of the central protagonist. Alucard has filled just about every role available. He was even featured as a boss encounter on numerous occasions. Indeed, it seems Alucard's story is tightly woven together with the fates of both the Belmont clan as well as the legacy of his own father. There's no doubt he's important, but is he worthy of being dubbed the most central character? I think not. The forces of darkness will inevitably continue their tirade upon the world with or without the intervention of the tragic prince. Sorry, Adrian, I'll save my gushing over you for later. But now, on to the final contender! Part 4. The Castle Argument. What? The castle, you say? Yes! I am about to convince you that not only is the castle a character in and of itself, but that it may also be the most central character within the entire Castlevania franchise. Now, if I may get political out of left field for a moment, I'm going to cite the relatively recent US court case Citizens United v. FEC, which grants corporations the degree of freedom of speech and personhood normally reserved for individual citizens. Consequently, corporations are thus allowed to influence politics and elections in an unprecedented manner as if they were actual human persons themselves. Now, if modern American law can view a semi-tangible entity as a unique, viable character with its own motives and interests, then would it not make sense to declare the castle to be a character as well? To help wrap our minds around this esoteric concept, perhaps it is best to first determine what the castle even is. The real-life Vlad Dracula, as well as Bram Stoker's fictional version of the Wallachian Prince, puts the castle as nothing more than his primary stronghold, so nothing really gripping there. The lore of the castle took a backseat in Stoker's novel, which concerned itself more with the development of its titular character. But what we're specifically looking into is the castle's identity in relation to the Castlevania game franchise, which in its earliest days was much more of an action-oriented homage to the monster mashup films of yesteryear than anything else. This basis would snowball into the castle of today, filled with creatures and artifacts drawn from mythology the world over. As far as canon goes, Castlevania has had a number of different origin stories, most of which are later retconned, but that's a topic for a different video. Depending on which game you play, the castle is either a home for demons by Dracula's decree, or a home for demons that operates fairly well without a master. It is either the former home of the Bernhard family, or it is a demonic incarnation from beyond time and space. This thing's all over the place. At its heart, though, the castle is not just a house for demons, but it is a demon itself. This is made most obvious when looking at Japan's native title for the series, which is Akumajo Dracula, which roughly translates to Demon Castle Dracula. It's not Dracula's castle filled with demons, it's a demoniac castle filled with Dracula. This can be clearly seen in the Sorrow duology, where the castle, or even a perfect replica of the castle, is able to conduct business as usual regardless of whose ass is seated at its throne. In some other games, the castle manifests on its own before Dracula is even resurrected. It knows when to return to the world of matter. It has a mind of its own. At the end of the day, although it's really a matter of opinion as to which character may be considered most central to the series, I think that the castle, by far, is the most consistent and important element. The castle really puts castle in Castlevania. I can't even imagine a proper Castlevania game without it being featured in some way or another. Even the Lords of Shadow Saga, which purposefully reimagined the universe's lore, kept true to this theme, because that's just how important it is. In my interpretation of Castlevania lore, I see the castle as a unique and ever-present aspect of the series, the one character that has appeared in literally every game. Think about it. Though your typical Castlevania game features a Belmont in some form, there are a handful which relegate the warrior clan to the back seat. And while Dracula is by far the most recurring boss encounter in the series, there are select entries which don't even feature the asshole at all. But the castle, every single game in the series concludes itself with a confrontation within the castle itself. It's inevitable. To call a game Demon Castle Dracula with no Demon Castle wouldn't make any sense. Even more than a Belmont or a Dracula, the Castlevania series is wholly dependent on there being a Demon Castle to work within. It's essential. I've played and seen a number of Castlevania ripoffs/tributes that, for obvious legal reasons, couldn't include a Belmont or other trademark elements. But you know what was consistent among these torchbearers? There's always a castle that takes center stage for the maze of monsters and traps to unfold upon. The castle is ubiquitous. Hey, thanks for watching my long-winded thesis on why a possessed piece of architecture deserves voting rights. I hope it at least gave you something to think about. Consider this whole discussion to be a bit of a thought pump of sorts. There's so much deep lore to be explored in this venerated series, and I have so much more in store, so stay tuned. In the meantime, don't forget to smash that mo-fucking like button like there's some wall meat behind it. And please, don't hesitate to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more coverage on Castlevania, as well as many other video game topics. Lastly, what do you think? Which character is most central in the franchise to you? Is Simon Belmont the obvious answer, and am I just way overcomplicating it? Or did I just turn you on to the concept of the castle acting as a main character in the story too? Throw your 2 cents into the comments to discussion. Throw your 2 cents into the comments to continue the discussion.